Perseus had done it. Against all odds, he had achieved what many thought impossible. He had faced the monstrous Phineus and emerged victorious. The battle was fierce, with the clash of swords and the cries of warriors echoing through the battlefield. With Medusa's head, he had turned the unruly throng of warriors to stone. The sight of the petrified warriors was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a testament to the power he wielded. Perseus had saved Andromeda from a terrible fate and claimed his bride. Their love story was one for the ages, a tale of bravery, sacrifice, and destiny intertwined. Now, he thought of his mother, Danae. She had been his guiding star, his source of strength and inspiration. He was eager to return to Seriphos and share his triumph with her. The journey back was long and arduous, but his heart was light with the thought of reuniting with his beloved mother. Little did he know, a different kind of danger awaited them both. The island of Seriphos held secrets and threats that he had yet to uncover. The journey back to Seriphos was filled with anticipation. Each passing day brought him closer to home, and his excitement grew with every mile. Perseus yearned to see his mother's face, to tell her about his adventures and his love for Andromeda. He imagined the look of pride and joy in her eyes as he recounted his heroic deeds. He imagined her joy at seeing him safe and sound. A hero returned. The embrace they would share, the tears of happiness, and the stories they would tell. Andromeda, too, was excited to meet the woman who raised this courageous man. She had heard so much about Danae and was eager to express her gratitude. Yet a shadow of unease lingered in Perseus's heart. Despite his triumphs, he couldn't shake off the feeling that something was amiss back home. The foreboding clouds that loomed over Seriphos seemed to mirror the uncertainty in his heart. What awaited him upon his return? Only time would tell. While Perseus was away, Danae found herself in a perilous situation. Polydectes, the king of Seriphos, had grown increasingly infatuated with her. He desired her for his own, but Danae, ever loyal to the memory of her late husband, refused his advances. Polydectes was not a man used to being denied. Enraged by Danae's rejection, Polydectes became cruel. He sought to punish her for defying him. He confined her to the palace, cutting her off from her friends and supporters. Yet, Danae remained strong. She refused to give in to the king's demands, clinging to the hope of Perseus's return. He was her only hope, her son, her hero. Perseus's ship finally arrived at the shores of Seriphos. The journey had been long and arduous, filled with countless perils and challenges. Yet the sight of the familiar coastline filled him with a renewed sense of purpose. He had returned not just as a son, but as a hero, ready to confront the injustices that awaited him. He rushed towards the palace, eager to see his mother. Each step he took was fueled by the memories of her kindness and the love she had shown him. The thought of her suffering under the tyrannical rule of King Polydectes spurred him on, making his strides longer and faster. But the palace gates were closed, guarded by armed men. These were not just any soldiers, they were the king's elite, trained to be ruthless and unyielding. The sight of their stern faces and gleaming weapons made Perseus's heart pound with a mix of fear and determination. Perseus felt a surge of dread. What if he was too late? What if his mother had already been harmed? These thoughts gnawed at him, but he quickly pushed them aside. He had to stay focused. He had to be strong for her. He demanded to see Danae, but the guards refused him entry. Their eyes were cold and unfeeling, showing no sign of compassion or understanding. They were merely following orders, but to Perseus, they were obstacles in his path to justice. They sneered at his claims, telling him that Danae was now under the protection of King Polydectes. Their mocking tones and derisive laughter only fueled his anger. How dare they speak of his mother in such a manner? How dare they belittle his quest? Enraged, Perseus pushed his way through the guards. His strength and determination were unmatched, and the guards, despite their training, were no match for his fury. He was a man on a mission, and nothing would stand in his way. He stormed into the palace, his hand gripping the hilt of his sword. The corridors echoed with the sound of his footsteps, a testament to his unwavering resolve. He was ready to face whatever lay ahead, even if it meant confronting the king himself. He found Polydectes in the throne room, surrounded by his courtiers. The king's smug expression and the sycophantic smiles of his followers only served to heighten Perseus's anger. This was the man who had caused so much pain and suffering. Polydectes laughed at the sight of him, mocking his journey and his claims of heroism. Perseus's blood boiled. The king's words were like poison, each one designed to undermine his confidence and belittle his achievements. He knew what he had to do. The time for words was over. Perseus's eyes narrowed with determination as he prepared to take action. He had faced monsters and gods, and now he would face a tyrant. For his mother, for justice, and for the people of Seriphos, he would not back down. "Polydectes!" Perseus boomed, his voice echoing through the hall. "You have tormented my mother for the last time!" The king scoffed, but a flicker of fear crossed his eyes. Perseus reached into his bag and pulled out the head of Medusa. The sight of the Gorgon, even in death, was terrifying. Before Polydectes could react, Perseus turned the Gorgon's head towards him. The king froze, his body slowly turning to stone. The courtiers gasped and fled in terror. Perseus had avenged his mother. He raced to Danae's chambers and broke down the door. They embraced, tears of joy and relief streaming down their faces. Finally, they were reunited. With Polydectes vanquished, peace returned to Seriphos. Andromeda, welcomed with open arms by Danae, flourished in her new home. Yet Perseus couldn't shake off a feeling of unease. He remembered the prophecy, the one that foretold he would kill his grandfather, King Acrisius of Argos. Perseus yearned to see his grandfather, to defy the prophecy. He hoped to reason with Acrisius, to convince him that he posed no threat. And so, accompanied by Danae and Andromeda, Perseus set sail for Argos, his heart heavy with a premonition of doom. Upon arriving in Argos, Perseus was met with suspicion and fear. The townspeople whispered among themselves, their eyes filled with a mix of awe and dread. They had heard tales of his heroic deeds, but also of the ominous prophecy that loomed over his life. News of his exploits and the prophecy had reached Acrisius. The king, who had long been haunted by the oracle's words, felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that his fate was intertwined with that of his grandson, and the thought filled him with terror. The king, terrified of his grandson, had fled the city. He abandoned his throne and sought refuge in a distant land, hoping to escape the destiny that seemed to be closing in on him. His departure left a void in Argos, a kingdom now without its ruler. Disheartened but determined, Perseus decided to participate in athletic games being held in a neighboring kingdom. He believed that by showcasing his strength and valor, he could win the favor of the people and perhaps even draw Acrisius out of hiding. The games were a chance for him to prove his worth, not just as a hero, but as a man. He hoped to prove his worth and perhaps even lure Acrisius out of hiding. Perseus trained tirelessly, his mind focused on the upcoming events. He scanned the crowds, searching for any sign of his grandfather, determined to confront the man who had caused so much turmoil in his life. As fate would have it, Acrisius was in the crowd, disguised to avoid detection. The king, driven by curiosity and fear, had come to witness the games. He hid among the spectators, his eyes fixed on Perseus, the grandson he had tried so hard to avoid. During the discus throw, a gust of wind blew Perseus's discus off course. The crowd gasped as the discus veered wildly, its trajectory altered by the sudden breeze. It was a moment of suspense, the air thick with anticipation and dread. It struck Acrisius on the head, killing him instantly. The crowd fell silent, the tragic accident unfolding before their eyes. Perseus, horrified, rushed to the fallen man, only to realize that he had unwittingly fulfilled the prophecy he had tried so hard to escape. The prophecy had been fulfilled. Perseus was devastated. The weight of his actions bore down on him, the realization that he could not outrun fate sinking in. He mourned not just for his grandfather, but for the life he had hoped to lead, free from the shadow of destiny. He had tried to outrun fate, only to find himself ensnared by it. Perseus stood alone, reflecting on the cruel twist of fate that had brought him to this moment. The sky above seemed indifferent to his sorrow, a silent witness to the tragic end of a hero's journey. Grief-stricken by the accidental fulfillment of the prophecy, Perseus returned to Argos. He could not bear to rule the kingdom where his grandfather had died. Instead, he made a fateful decision. He traded kingdoms with his cousin, Megapenthus, ruler of Tiryns. This exchange brought Perseus to a new land, where he and Andromeda would rule wisely and well. Perseus's reign was marked by prosperity and peace. He and Andromeda had many children, their descendants becoming great heroes and rulers in their own right. The legacy of Perseus, the slayer of monsters and the champion of justice, lived on, inspiring generations to come.